Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 379. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss Disney, America's Heart and Soul. We recently celebrated America 250, and we were trying to find something that was the perfect accompaniment to that celebration. This documentary, it's a title card I've seen on Disney Plus a handful of times. I had never seen it before, and I wasn't really sure what to make of it, but according to the descriptor, when you click on the title card, and I'm very much paraphrasing this, by the way, it basically says, following ordinary people in their everyday life coast to coast. I know this is from 2004, so at the time of this recording, it's 22 years old, but something about the description of this sounded like the perfect slice of Americana.
I had never even heard of this one, but when you told me about it, I agree. Like, it just sounded like you hit the nail right on the head, especially, because it's not any political figures. It's not any celebrities that are being focused on. It's just everyday people like you and me, which I thought was really interesting. When you consider what was happening in 2004. Part of me was wondering if this was Disney's response to like the Michael Moore documentaries that were very popular at the time, because, he had done Bowling for Columbine, he had done Fahrenheit 9/11, and both of those were obviously very critical of the political climate. And I was wondering, if this was sort of their response, but also when you consider what's happening in 2004, we're 3 years removed from 9/11. You and I are about to vote in our first presidential election. So I was just really interested to dive into this and be reminded of everything that was going on in our country at the time. It also reminded me, when you told me about it, of this book that I had read called Road Trip Nation, A Guide to Discovering Your Path in Life. And it was these two guys who were just sort of unsure what they wanted to do with their lives. And they were, I can't remember if they were like just out of college or just out of high school, but, they were looking to enter the workforce and they really weren't sure what they wanted to do. So they rented an RV and they went around the country, just interviewing people who were really passionate about their jobs and love what they do. And eventually, I think it got picked up on PBS. They did like a television release in conjunction with the book. But the interviews were absolutely fascinating. Some of the jobs were more notable than what we have in the film here. Like they interviewed the director of SNL, who was a female, so like that definitely was something I was interested in. But like it just, when you pitched this to me, like it reminded me so much of the book. And what I love about that book is just like people who work hard and love what they do. So I could not wait to watch this. I think you hit the nail right on the head with this one.
And it's funny that you bring up the Michael Moore documentaries, because at the same time, you had those were very politically charged. But then you also had things like Super Size Me. Morgan Spurlock put that documentary out. That was a big deal around the same time that this was all happening. So documentaries at that time were sort of, especially the ones that went mainstream, they were all sort of the same idea in, let's expose a seedy underbelly. Let's expose the ugly. So I was interested to see, too, like in comparison, is this Disney sort of doing what you expect Disney to do, which is the very sanitized version of everyday life?
True. But I was really happy to watch it, too, because I felt like I really didn't get to celebrate the 4th of July enough. I think this is common for most dog owners. It's never really I really never make big plans on 4th of July because most of the time Sean is working. And I want to do the responsible thing and stay with my dog. And I'm happy to do it. That's not a complaint as long as he is here. Um, that's all I care about. So I'm happy to sit in the closet with him. But, for the past 10 years or so, except for when we were living on the island and if my parents were watching him for the night, um, it's never something that I'm really able to do. But like, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But this year, being that it was America 250, like I wanted to do something. So this was like the perfect fix for that, for not being able to go out.
Well, how does this compare to the book that you had read? And did this age well, considering it was released over 20 years ago? And how relatable is it today? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Where in the Park. Our friends at Where in the Park make seek and find card games designed to play in the theme parks and turn your day into an interactive adventure. Game packs come with a deck of cards, each with an image on it that is hidden somewhere in the theming of the park, helping you to discover details you've probably walked past 100 times. Where in the Park game packs will spark curiosity, encourage connection, and make every visit to the parks even more memorable. Visit monoreelradio.com and click on our affiliate link to purchase your game packs at a discount.
I think the best way to do this is to sort of go vignette by vignette, because this doesn't lay out like a Waking Sleeping Beauty, for example. There's no, like, timeline, there's no story, you're just following people around, which I thought was a really interesting thing to do. It's not where I thought this was going to go. I'm sort of interested in knowing, like, what were your expectations going in? Did you think we were going to follow some sort of time frame? Did you think we were going to start at one coast and end at the other? Because this one tends to jump around quite a bit.
I'm really glad that you brought that up now, because that was jarring to me. Like, there was really no rhyme or reason to it. I thought maybe they would tie this. I mean, okay, obviously America is the common thread that's tying everybody together, right? But I thought maybe just to give it some kind of flow, it would go more geographically. So that threw me a little bit. But what threw me more than anything else, there are no lower thirds identifying these people. Some of them did their whole vignette without an introduction or without naming themselves. And that, just from a filmmaking standpoint, that really bothered me. Like, that's where it lost points, if anything. You need to ID these people. Even if not to state their job, because a couple of these, they focus on people, it's their hobbies, but like, you just need to give me something. You got to give me a name. So that was really, really surprising. But yeah, I would have loved a little bit more of a flow in that way if we were doing it geographically. But that's why you and I have lovingly taken to calling this Soren the director's cut.
Well, I mean, that's basically what it is, because you get these really wonderful sweeping landscapes, and that's how they set up every new place that we are in. So it looks like Soren, but as opposed to simply flying through and moving on to the next location, you fly through and then you spend time in that location with a handful of people that they selected. And that's why it felt like, as we called it, Soren the director's cut. And it starts with Rowdy, a horse wrangler out in Telluride. So you're starting out in Colorado, and then we'll get back to Colorado later. It does jump around. I honestly thought that this was the perfect start, because when you think about traditional America, right? Like, when you think about what's the nostalgia that is America, I don't think most people think the suburbs. I think most people think the Old West, the Wild West. So you've got this guy, Rowdy. He is totally a throwback. The character, the nostalgia, the beautiful sweeping landscapes. I think he as a character himself is unique enough, but I think to kind of kick off what this entire documentary is about to do, I thought he was a perfect choice.
I have that exact note. This was such a strong start with such a big personality. he has such great energy. He's great on camera. So this was the perfect way to kick it off. And then you do get that wow factor because he rides the horse right into the bar. So it definitely hooks you from the beginning. What I was really impressed with was that it got so personal right away with the sobriety journey.
Yeah.
I really thought that it was going to be more broad strokes with the people that they interviewed. But I love how some of them just got so deeply personal with their stories.
Then you move on down to the bayou, and you've got Mark and Anne's story. This was great because they're doing Cajun music. So you're thinking that Louisiana Cajun, not quite jazz, we're going to get to that later, New Orleans sort of music. But I thought that this is uniquely Americana. And upon doing research into her specifically, she actually has a very impressive background where she had produced albums that were nominated for Grammys. I think she produced for Linda Ronstadt, actually, I think is who she was with. But, like, super unassuming and still sort of doing her own thing. And I love that where we went was from the Wild West into the swamps.
Yeah, that's where it does kind of work, not following a map, so to speak, as far as like doing this in order. And I think, you know what, as we're talking through this, I think it would have done a disservice because the point is to show diversity. So it's nice that you can go from one region to the other. That's really interesting about Linda Ronstadt. That wasn't my takeaway from this at all. What struck me most was that Mark had said that his family, his kids are living in their great grandfather's home. So you've got a multi-generation household. And like, that struck me just as far as, this was 2004, but like, it's not just looking back on a different time. It is just about, just a completely different way of life. And I think that was also smart about who they chose too, because a lot of these stories are timeless. But, when they're talking about being able to live in your family's home, like that's something as native New Yorkers that we can't really relate to, because with the way that the housing market is, to be able to inherit a home, if you are so fortunate, and be able to afford it with the taxes up here, like that's just something, unless you are a multi-generational family living under one roof in New York, like that's just something that was never even an option up here to have a home to pass down. So that was something that really struck me about this particular family.
Then you move on to Mosey Burks, who is one of the most empowering people in this documentary. She unfortunately passed away last year. She was...
Why would you tell me that?
Well, I mean, Jack, this was 22 years ago. Not everybody who was in this documentary is still here. But
I know, no, and I was thinking that, but I just loved her so much. What an incredible spirit. I adored her. She was one of my favorites.
I mean, she lived until about the age of 95 or 96, so she had a great run. But what was incredible about her is her story in general. Her mother passed away when her mother was 40 years old. So Mosey was very young when she lost her mother, and she basically had to raise, I think she said it was 8 kids, her siblings. She basically had to raise them on her own, and she became the mother figure. And she talked about how people in town recognized her, how people in town would help her with food, and she was a gospel singer. And the way that she talked about, Mosey was African American, and she's in her church, she's heading this choir, and she talks about how gospel music came from slavery. So to see this woman in the South embracing her history and using this awful thing, but empowering that music and just the way she took ownership of it and became such a force in the gospel community. Like, her character was inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's just so proud, which is so nice to see. Like she said my mother was a great mother and I've become a good mother, and um you just tell she's very proud that like she picked herself up by the bootstraps and made a life for herself.
Then you meet Minnie Yancey, who is a rug maker. She's got her spindle, she's working on rugs, and she's a mountain person. She is an Appalachian person, and she is so proud of it. But my favorite line of the movie is they talk about how they live on the farm, they don't have much, and she says, I've been broke many times, but I've never been poor. That is, to me, that's the heart of this entire film.
Did you look at my notes? That's the exact thing that I have written down. Yeah, it's th- that is a very strong theme. Along with the American spirit. It's that is that, you know, people are not afraid to I mean, obviously you want to be able to survive. Um but it's people are okay living within their means, um as long as they're doing something that they love, and that was, um this was just a standout with her. And what's so funny too is the way that she spoke about her husband um tending to the farm every day, and she was like, he's got so much self-discipline to be out there on the tractor at 8 o'clock every morning, and I could learn from that. Or she said something to the effect of, I wish I had that kind of discipline, which is, it's kind of funny that she would say something like that when she is sitting at this loom all day turning out rugs. Like, she's working just as hard. But that was also something interesting that she said too. She said that she learned to listen at the loom, and most people pray and do all of the talking. um and she just gave um so many like really deep, thoughtful bites without with very few words.
We then meet George Woodard. He's a dairy farmer and also a part-time filmmaker. If there is one person in this movie that feels like a Hallmark film come to life, it's George Woodard, because he's born and raised on the farm, and he does what? He leaves hometown to go to the big city to pursue his dream, only to end up back on the farm again. But what's different is that he doesn't do it with any sort of animosity. He does it because, as much as he loved being in LA, like, he knew his place was back on the farm. So he goes, he's a dairy farmer, he plays his music, and I love that he still does part-time filmmaking, but he's a man of his means, and he uses everything on the farm for his sets. He uses his family as the actors. There was just a charm about this that I really can't put my finger on.
I agree. He's super charming. And you're right. He doesn't have like a chip on his shoulder. He's not, carrying the grudge of like being a has-been or never was. Absolutely not. But I did think he was so humble until he started sort of plugging the songwriting and the filmmaking. um, but what stuck out to me more than anything else, he also directs plays. Did you happen to catch the name of his musical?
Dracula musical!
No, and it was that's around the same time as Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I was cracking up that there is an actual Dracula the musical happening, and I love that.
I can't. All right, let's move on to Ben Cohen. Everybody knows this man as Ben from Ben and Jerry's. Is somebody going to tell him to wipe his face? It was so distracting that he literally has ice cream dripping off his massive beard for literally half of this interview.
But I feel like that's them though, and it's so on brand. So if memory so here's the funny thing. I think Ben and Jerry were interviewed for the book because as soon as he came up, I was like, wait, why do I know so much about Ben and Jerry? Um, and I think that's part of the whole shtick is that they sort of like failed upwards with their brand because they make good ice cream, great ice cream. And then, he says it right here is that they're not trying to do anything other than meet the need. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're not trying, like that's it. They're the same as the people selling ice cream from an ice cream truck. And I think that's what makes them so endearing. So I think from a producer standpoint, I would have never let my interview go on for that long with something on my subject's face. However, it works for them. I wish we would have gotten more time with him though, because then we sort of go into this montage and like I think it was well balanced in that way because you do go from a household name back into the coal miners, a hat maker, a chair maker, a vintner, and it goes from a super successful CEO, even though somebody that doesn't look like a CEO in the traditional sense, back to, the everyday people working with their hands.
And I do love that we see Ed Holt from that California vineyard. I think when you think California, if you're not thinking, Surf City and the Beach Boys, which would have been the easy thing to do, right? Or Muscle Beach. Sure. To focus in on a vineyard, and interestingly enough, to not use Ron Miller, who owned a vineyard. To use Ed Holt, I just love that this was in here.
No, and I think it's important to include because, we know California wines, and obviously, with you especially being a sommelier when you were getting your certification, we tried a whole bunch of them, but I think people look at Napa Valley as a travel destination more so than an industry. Like when you think of major wine regions, you're thinking of France, you're thinking of Spain, you're thinking of Italy. Like it is a big industry here for us too. So I think it was important to include something like this.
Yeah, and I mean, 20 years ago, the region was still very much up and coming, right? So, now it seems like it fits in, but 22 years ago, it was very, very different. But I love that it's in there. Then you meet Ace and James, oil well firefighters. I mean, Ace is 70 years old. He's a firefighter because he used to work on a rig. He was burned, and his takeaway from that was he wanted to learn how to put the fires out. These guys are hardcore. They're the most hardcore people, I think, in this movie.
Well, it's so funny because we just reviewed Armageddon a couple of weeks ago, well, months ago at this point. But, the whole thing is that Harry didn't want Gracie to marry a roughneck. And they do very much have that reputation. But as soon as we got to the oil field, I thought that was going to be the focus. I honestly didn't even know that this was a thing, that it was a specific firefighter for that kind of a location. I guess I just kind of assume, I mean, not that I've given it that much thought, but I guess I just kind of thought you had people with the drill teams specifically that were monitoring safety, not that you had to have a whole expert team of firefighters on hand to put it out.
Yeah. Then we go on in what is to me like a perfect transition from these oil well firefighters to the Weirton steel workers. They had to buy their jobs back. The mill was going to shut down. This is something that has been discussed for decades and decades and decades. This is still being fought. Instead of buying, steel from other countries that have 25-cent an hour labor trying to buy steel from the United States. And this is what they're talking about in the film. Unfortunately, this mill did close down in 2021, but this might be one of the most timely things in the entire film because this is something that for the better part of 50 years has been a point of contention.
Yeah, this one really broke my heart. The fact that they pulled everything together to make it an employee-owned company and to know that it still ended up closing despite their best efforts is pretty heartbreaking. But the personal stories too, they were fighting so hard because they needed the health insurance, especially for Andy and his story where his daughter had a brain tumor. He didn't want to hit hard reset on changing professions because he needed the insurance for her. And as a team too, I can't even imagine like how maddening it was because they're saying that they do everything green, and they are being very mindful of the environment, and they're not getting the investments that they need to continue to do things the right way, in a way that's not harmful. So this is just heartbreaking across the board. But again, though, from the standpoint of filmmaking, it's a very good balance because there's the light and the heavy.
Then
I like that. Yeah. I appreciate that Disney didn't shy away from that.
And then you get more into the light with Waltham, that rock band. And it was so cool to see.
This is the most Boston thing I've ever seen.
A rock band trying to make it, and then you see the other side of life with their day jobs where they're working in a car wash and driving a truck for a living. This, to me, was one of, like, the most relatable things ever.
Agreed. I appreciate that they didn't focus on a band that had some notoriety or like maybe put out an album or was like right on the brink of breaking out where they're doing music full time. I love that they juxtapose that with the day jobs, and not just any day job. It's not like they're just working in an office. Like, again, these are people that are working hard, working with their hands. This was great. This was really great. And the song is pretty catchy.
Then you meet Yak, a messenger in New York City, delivering packages, which now at this point, this profession is long gone because of Amazon. But at the time, these guys delivering messages and packages on bicycles was a big thing. I looked and I couldn't find out how long it took them to make this documentary, because in one shot, and it's a quick shot, which I think was done intentionally, you can see the World Trade Center in the background. And I thought, oh, that's odd that they would just use stock footage. Maybe this entire thing was stock footage on a low budget. But then
it was. I can tell you a lot of it was, because a lot of the opening shots in the beginning are Getty Images. I've pulled more shots of New York and LA than I care to even think about, and some of them were starting to look very familiar.
Well, then I see this shot of like Yak flying by on a bicycle, but maybe it wasn't actually him, because you see a banner that says NYC 2000. So, and I remember those banners being up in the year 2000. So like, I couldn't figure out, is this something that they shot footage over the course of 4 years, or were they using stock footage and they were cheating some of it? But if you're recognizing some of the footage, then obviously that answers at least part of the question.
Yeah. No, but I mean, think about it. You're talking about interviewing people from all across the country. So the travel alone, I don't know if this was something that Disney distributed after it was shot, like if it was filmed as an independent, because in the beginning it did say, I believe it was Blacklight Films. So it could have been that Disney picked it up after the fact and somebody just did this, with their own independent funds. And if that is the case, it makes sense that they would film it over so many years.
Well, it was definitely distributed by Buena Vista Pictures, but Walt Disney Pictures is listed as a production company. So do with that what you will.
Okay. All right. So they had Disney money to do this then. I mean, it could have been a whole bunch of things that delayed it. But I didn't catch that with the World Trade Center shot, so it could have just my gut would tell me that that's footage that they shot, because this has to pass through so many hands and so many eyes. Somebody would have caught that if that was stock footage that they were using. I would hope. But what I love most about this vignette, there are so many jobs that you could pick to follow in New York. There's so many people that you could interview. I really love that they went with probably the least obvious choice of a profession here. And the footage of him riding around like that is absolutely incredible. Like that was a nail biter, watching some of the, like closing the doors of taxis as they're opening and everything. Like this was a fascinating look at Manhattan.
Then we go down to New Orleans, where we meet James and his younger brother, Trombone Shorty. I actually knew who Trombone Shorty is, because now he's not so shorty anymore. Now he's an adult, but he kept his name, and he actually has become a fairly notable name in the New Orleans jazz community. But to show New Orleans jazz was absolute perfection. And I hate to say it, because we just celebrated July 4th, and we're starting to get into Summerween, which means things like Hallow Scream and Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party and Halloween Horror Nights. But as soon as these guys came on the screen, I went, ooh, Mardi Gras. So, like, it just, I love that this is in here. And I think the fact that you're showing so many different styles of music, but specifically New Orleans jazz, after seeing Cajun music earlier in the film, it was perfection.
Yeah, this was a big surprise for me. I had to go look it up, and I was like, wait, Trombone Shorty, like, as in Trombone Shorty? So, I know I said at the top of the show, like, this didn't include celebrities or politicians or anything, but just how funny, with the passage of time, somebody did grow up to become famous that was focused on. Because Trombone Shorty is not just big in New Orleans in the jazz community. I mean, he has definitely crossed over to mainstream. So that was very, very cool to see, especially to get a look at his family like this. But I love it. I love like, you can't talk about painting a picture of America without focusing on New Orleans jazz music. Like, you just can't. It's part of the very fabric. So this was great to see.
Then we meet the Art Car Festival. These people with these wacky cars, and they're all pieces of art. They're so eccentric, though maybe not the most eccentric. That's coming up soon. I can see why they got picked.
Same. This was like news to me. I had no idea. I mean, like, obviously car shows are very big, but like, what we usually see is classic car shows or like muscle car shows, I feel like that's the more common thing. But I had no idea that this was a subset. I had no idea that it was such a big to do. But I love the eccentricity of it. Like, these people are doing it as a hobby for no one other than themselves. Like, some of them are like so nomadic, taking the cars on the road, and it's just, for the love of doing it. So that was pretty cool.
And then we meet Paul Stone, who does explosive art. And I thought to myself, I certainly see why you picked this guy that lives in this town. They said it's an asylum at 8,800 feet in Colorado, a town that's got 250 people in it. But the more I researched this man, the more I went, you've got to be kidding me. This man later became the CEO of Hertz Rental Cars.
Stop it.
He was the president. He was the president and CEO of Hertz.
The guy that said ram the ham and then tried to make a sandwich?
Yes, with a cannon.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, I loved this whole segment. I love that the town is, rallying behind him because it's like, what else are they going to do? And he's keeping them entertained. Um, he's such a character. I, just the whole thing was absolutely hysterical. Um, but what a great person to shed light on. But that blows my mind that he's a CEO now. Wow.
Then we meet Patty Wagstaff. Great to see a female pilot here, one that certainly gained notoriety for her aerobatic flying. She actually opened up an academy in St. Augustine, Florida. She's in her mid-70s now, but she still operates her academy. She's still teaching to this day.
She was fascinating. What a just a fascinating person. Like, this is why I'm so glad like that they chose to highlight everyday people, because you'd never really know about anybody doing anything like this. Her stunts were absolutely incredible. I would have been absolutely terrified to be in that plane with her. But it's not just about her accomplishments as a business owner. She's a heavily decorated competition winner in a male-dominated field. So that was really, really cool to see.
Then we meet the Bandaloop Cliff Dancers. I don't know who's going to watch the Cliff Dancers. I don't know if they hold performances, but it's a thing in California, and it's certainly interesting enough where I can understand why they were featured in this documentary.
Yeah, this was another thing I had no idea about. Obviously, rock climbing, sure, but I didn't know that they did it as like an aerial dancing performance art kind of a thing. It looked really cool, like those overhead shots looking down. It filmed really nicely. That was very cool.
Then we met Dan Kleinert, who was a he was a junk artist. So he would, and you see this, you've seen it then, you see it now. People that basically take scrap metal and take trash and they turn them into sculptures. This guy, it was amazing how he could just grab random rubble out of a box, and I'm sure he knows what's in these boxes, right? So like his wheels are already turning, but he can just grab two pieces of metal that don't come from the same equipment and go, look, now it's a camel. Look, now it's an elephant. Like, the way that his mind worked was so much fun to see. And he's another sort of redemption story, for a lack of a better term, because he talked about he was a special ed student. And to see how he could take his visions and take his motivator and take his art, and it's a hobby, but it later becomes successful for him. I don't want to call it a redemption story, but it's an inspirational story.
Yeah, I love what he said about the importance of having art in schools. Again, I love how this documentary gets so deep and not, it could have just been broad strokes. He's a sculptor, because he's in the Pacific Northwest, I believe, which I kind of feel like is a region that was like underserved in this documentary, because this is like the only time we get up there. But he was saying that his shop is on the way. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like either a festival or like something where he's getting a lot of foot traffic, where people are driving through there for an event. So it's great that he's able to make a living in this way, but I love that he tied it back to his struggles as a child and, embracing what made him different and being able to make a life out of it.
Then we meet Charles Jimmy Sr., who was a Tlingit Indian elder. And his whole story with his father was an eagle and his mother, I think he said his mother was a raven, and talking about the spirituality and being one with animals, and how they rehab injured bald eagles and they nurse them back to health. This just gave me all the feels that you want to feel in America 250.
Absolutely. And I mean, you have to have an eagle. But that would have been a huge miss if they had done this documentary without some sort of eagle.
We then see David Krakauer, Krakauer, a klezmer clarinetist. And I think only because you had mentioned earlier we were born and raised on Long Island before we moved down here to live in the world's greatest playground, or at least within a magical arm's length of the world's most magical playground. I remember him. I remember him as being just a figurehead of New York music. So seeing him was like being reintroduced to an old friend.
Yeah, as soon as they said the name, I'm like, wait, I know this, I know this. And especially too, because I played we called it the Clarahorn when I was a kid. Yeah, this was cool. And again, just a sector of New York that you wouldn't think of top of mind. So this was very cool.
Then we meet the Vasquez brothers, salsa dancing. I loved this. The neon and the color and the way that it was shot, honestly, like it reminded me of old school Pleasure Island. So I love that they incorporated this as a different sector of America. But the way that it's shot kind of brought me back to a place in time that as much as I love Disney Springs, there is a part of me that still very much misses Pleasure Island. And that's what this reminded me of.
Yeah, I love the family element of it too. They're all just kind of laughing and joking with each other. But no, I think this was smart because we've covered sculpting at this point. We've covered music quite a bit. They did a little beat leading into this. It was a montage with a graffiti artist and an opera singer. But you have to have dance as part of the conversation too. Like if you're focusing on, most dance originated in, it was carried over to America. We don't have a lot of like original dances here other than maybe like, I don't know, the Macarena. But you can't gloss over what dance has been as a part of American history. And how it's, because it's adapted so much with all of these different styles and blending styles together. I think that was really smart to have this as a focus.
We then meet Michael Bennett, an Olympic boxer. This was a great redemption story because they talk about how Michael went to jail. He went to prison as an adolescent, and he learned to box in jail. And he went to a boxing trainer, and the boxing trainer talked about how he had pictures on the wall of former students of his who have since passed away, a lot of it crime-related, to see that Michael came out of it and became a captain for the Olympic team. This was a great story to hear.
Yeah, this was fascinating. I love how they balanced it out with the yin and the yang of the coach trying to keep the kids off the streets and the redemption story. I thought that was great. And how Mike is now a mentor to this kid whose punches were so unbelievably fast. I meant to look him up because I want to see where this kid's at today. Like, he looked unbelievable.
Eric Wyenmeyer is a blind climber who later does climb the 7 summits. Watching him in this documentary, he was born with sight. He was not born blind. He went blind over the course of his life. And to see somebody take something like that, which it's so heartbreaking, I couldn't even imagine going through it. But to take it and say, I'm going to empower myself with it, and I'm not going to let it beat me down. This is one of the most inspiring people in the film.
Hands down. So fascinating. I can't even wrap my mind around mountain climbing, period, because I don't like heights. So to do that, to want to climb the tallest mountains and to do it without sight, I just like that is the embodiment of the human spirit. It's incredible.
We move on to San Francisco, where we meet Reverend Cecil Williams and his wife Janice Murakatani from the Glide Church. And these people were incredible. They, unfortunately, hate to break it to you, have both since passed away, but they leave a tremendous legacy in San Francisco because he founded this church, and it's sort of, I don't want to say it's non-denominational, but they accept everybody. And really what he wanted to do was he was looking to take people in for those who were struggling, not just spiritually, but also struggling with addiction, struggling with homelessness, and to bring them in and to feed them and to give them a place where they did not feel out of place. I love that they are included in this story.
Same. I will say, I think the setup could have been a little better because the way that they made it sound was that he was just out on the corner preaching when they first got started. It sounded very cult-like, which is obviously not what it is because, you know, what they've done is incredible and they are inclusive of everyone. But I think they needed to finesse the setup just a little bit here.
Then we meet Team Hoyt, a father and son duo. The son had cerebral palsy, and the father would push him in his wheelchair, and they ran the Boston Marathon together. Both of them have since passed away, but if you're in the running community, like specifically people that do Run Disney, because we see Roll Disney go out at the Run Disney races, and we cheer so hard for those runners. It was big news when the two of them passed away, and within 2 or 3 years of each other, and very recently. But this is another situation where you see somebody who had this very, very sad disability and empowered himself with it, and he didn't allow it to keep him down, and his father was there as his support system to not allow him to be put down, you know, so to speak. They were a team effort. To this day, they still fundraise for Team Hoyt. They are the last group that we see in this movie. I think from an America perspective, from a Run Disney perspective, they were just the perfect way to end this.
Yeah, if you've managed to make it this far into the documentary without tearing up, like this is going to put you over the edge. What an incredible story. What an incredible family. This was just so moving.
So, final thoughts on Disney America's Heart and Soul. I'm going to go ahead and let you go first.
Final thoughts. This was exactly what I wanted it to be. It was just so heartfelt and so moving and so perfectly reflective of the American spirit. This is one that I'm probably going to revisit every year for the 4th of July, the same way I would Jaws. It's just great. It is a really feel-good documentary. However, it is not without its warts. I'm not going to turn my head the other way when it comes to not IDing these people with a lower third. With certain aspects of filmmaking, it was a little bit sloppy, but because of the subject matter, even though some of it's unforgivable, you do want to say, you know, this documentary is so meaningful, you can look the other way on it. So, you know, certain things you can forgive, but I think, you know, it could have been a little bit tighter, but looking past that, just for the emotional aspect of it all, for everybody's individual story, this was a really, really great documentary.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a perfect score, which, to your point, it does have warts for someone like you that's going to look at it through a different eye than I am. If I had any issue with it at all, it's that it's all over the place, in that we're not starting in one spot and moving in a linear fashion to another spot. But On the other hand, it's not about starting in one place and going to another. It's about telling you diverse, empowering, inspirational stories with a bit of whimsy and a bit of fun, all of which is to just be a slice of Americana. And that's exactly what this is. It absolutely is something that has aged very well. I think that it is something that, to your point, I would go back and revisit every year for Independence Day. To me, it's just a giant Epcot film. This could be Soren the director's cut. This could be the American Adventure. This was the exact thing that I wanted it to be. I'm glad that I saw it when I did. I don't think I would have appreciated it at a younger age. I think that sitting here and watching it now, with a bit of nostalgia, remembering what life was like in 2004, but also reflecting on what our country is at America 250, this gave me the feels that I wanted to have. And I would implore you, if you have never seen this before, go ahead and check it out. I don't think you will be disappointed. But we'd love to hear from you. And we want to know what you have to say about Disney America's Heart and Soul. Have you watched this since its release in 2004? Is it something you recently stumbled upon? And do you think that it is something that you can revisit year after year? You can let us know on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first a quick break. Jackie is an independent travel advisor helping families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories in the most magical place on earth. Planning for a Disney vacation can be stressful, but it doesn't need to be when you're assisted by a travel specialist who will work with you to customize the perfect vacation for you and your family. Jackie will help you determine which parks to visit on each day, ensure you know the ins and outs of essential tools like the My Disney Experience app, assist with booking dining reservations, lightning lanes, and other enhancements like ground transportation and travel insurance. Most importantly, Jackie will share all of her favorite hacks so that you can get the most out of your vacation. Visit monoreelradio.com/travel to start making magic now.
Hey everyone, this is Brian down here in South Florida. I'm about 2 hours south of Disney, and when it comes to planning vacations, Jackie's the way to go. When it came to booking my family vacation for my 2-year-old daughter and my wife, you know, like everybody, I immediately went to the internet, started scouting prices. Just out of curiosity, I reached out to Jackie. She mentioned she was booking vacations for many people. So I gave her my list, my itinerary. She looked it over, and when she came back to me, she gave me her recommendations in regards to the parks. However, she also had new pricing associated with it. I've learned that going on my own doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be getting the best pricing. On top of that, it was stress-free. So all my vacations in the future are going to be through her because I don't have to think about it. She plans it. I give her some information in regards to what I want to do and create the itinerary for me. She's a market expert. She advised on which rides to attack first, which restaurants I should schedule on what day, and how to properly allocate my time to maximize my vacation. It was an amazing process. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
With Christmas in July starting on the Hallmark Channel, we got a very big trailer drop this week. The first trailer for Holiday Ever After, a Disney World wish come true. We don't have a premiere date yet, but I have to tell you, bias aside, I thought this first trailer was great. Some of the lines that are going to be in this movie are going to just slap. They're going to slap if you're a Disney fan, but even if you're not, some of the banter is so witty. I belly laughed through a considerable amount of this trailer. I cannot wait to see how this goes. You, of all people, have a more in-depth idea of exactly what is going to happen here, so I'm very curious to see how you felt seeing this trailer come to life.
It was wild seeing it come to life. This was the moment of like, wow, it's actually real for me. And the timing could not have been more odd because I had just wrapped up on another project that I love just as much as working on this. So I was all in my feels about it, and this could not have come at a more perfect time. I mean, I figured we were going to get the trailer for Christmas in July, knowing that it's going to premiere for Countdown to Christmas, but I didn't know it was coming on the drop date. It just, I saw it on somebody, not even on Disney, somebody else that I worked on the film with, she posted to her Instagram, and I was like, oh, we have a trailer. This is great. Yeah, it's interesting because I read the script. So like, obviously I know what happens. Obviously I have read all of these lines, but it's completely different. Like seeing them read by the cast and chopped together in the trailer. Cause that's the thing. Like I wasn't on set for a lot of the shoot. I worked in the office. So that's kind of the fun part for like, as much as I know what's coming and I know it's going to happen and I know how it's going to, I mean, it's a Hallmark movie. We all know how it's going to play out. Right. But to actually see it, I'm having like, it's the best of both worlds. I know what's going to happen, but like, I just get to be part of the audience now for everything else. So that's fun. And the other big surprise was it wasn't just a trailer drop. Disney has not posted this yet, but on the Hallmark socials, they posted a sneak peek. So we get to see a scene play out in Hollywood studios right in front of our favorite decorations, Sean. So that was pretty cool too.
I can't wait to finally see the finished product, and hopefully by the end of Christmas in July, we'll have a premiere date. I would imagine something like that is going to be happening sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.